Oh, okay. You get to see my hair as long as I still have it. But I think I'll keep the jacket because it's cold. Or a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Look, 4 layers of red. Nah, I keep the jacket. Okay, good. Hello and welcome to LVlog number 42. 42, the answer or something. I just like that number because people told me to like that number, which is, funnily enough, playing directly into the topic of today's video, which is how do I think and where does my thinking come from, because I have a new mental model of that, I think, or something like that. But let's start with something simple that you hopefully also understand, and that is life is complicated and things are not usually one-dimensional. Example, I have been at a family lunch, you know, where you meet the extended family, because with a close family we're somewhat aligned and we think similarly, but then with extended family you meet like all sorts of very different people who have different opinions about things, and all of them think that they are so right to a degree where I find that really funny. So for instance, last time we were discussing grocery stores and which store you should buy stuff in, and then it's just, I don't know, and I don't particularly enjoy those conversations because I'm like, you are discussing things that are, you know, kind of almost pointless to discuss, because depending on which angle you look at it from, you get a different answer. Like, which store should you go buy stuff in? There's no trivial answer for that. Or maybe I give you something more concrete. Which sort of meat should you be buying? Right? There's the argument, oh, you want to have the organic, non-genetic grass feed with a lot of freedom to move around, you know, the expensive kind of good quality meat, which, yeah, okay, I can agree with that. From that angle, it makes sense. But when you look at it from another angle, if you're trying to purely be environmentally friendly, then it makes way more sense to buy the meat that is mass produced and where the animals are in cages, where they use less land, less water, less food, and are therefore better for the environment, which is also a valid logical argument. But then of course that ignores the whole aspect of animal welfare. And then with all of that, we can say, well, should you buy meat anyway? Shouldn't you just go vegan? And then we can make the argument of, oh, the best way to do it is to not buy meat at all. And counter to that, you can of course make an argument that, oh well, but insert random argument for consuming meat. So there is no black and white. That was just an example. And then they ask me, hey Andy, what's your opinion on this? And I'm like, I mean, I can tell you how I currently do it, but I don't want to get in on that argument because it seems super pointless to discuss those things. I mean, okay, no, it's fine to discuss those things and bring those points to the table, but if you try to find the best solution, then I'm gonna be like, no, there is no best solution. You can always optimize on the one thing, but then you ignore all the other thousands of parameters that you could be optimizing for. And finding a good solution is optimizing most of the things to get to something that, you know, hits. For me, that would be consuming very little meat, and if I do, then it's just gonna be poultry, like chicken stuff, and not red meat. And if I really want to treat myself to some red meat, then I try to have it a good quality, because for that little amount I prefer to go for the animal welfare versus that tiny bit that it makes a difference for the environment. So that's how I do it. However, I have had a time where I was completely vegan. I was refusing to buy or eat meat, purely also for the environmental reasons, which now I'm like, well, some of the processed vegan stuff I was buying is probably worse, environmentally speaking, than some chicken for the same amount of protein. So it's like my viewpoint also changes with time. And that brings me to the real topic of today's video, which is, how do I think? And can I trust my thoughts? Because that is interesting, because for the most part of my life I thought that, well, I kinda am my thoughts or something like that, or I do it the best way, like how I do it is the best way or whatever. But that completely ignores that I don't have the full information. Ever. And also, I am highly influenced by the people around me and the content I consume. Because it's not just the people, it's primarily for somebody who spends most of their time online, the content that I consume. So my opinions are formed by what the algorithms feed me. So therefore, I need to basically double think, or where are those thoughts coming from, and do I just have them because I consumed some content recently? And I noticed myself falling for that. Like, you know, you've seen videos lately. I had a phase where I was nihilistic. I had a phase where I was super afraid of World War III and like atomic war. I'm currently in a phase where I'm very concerned about AI. Basically, my current stance, and that's funny, is that, oh well, AI is gonna take over sooner or later anyway, so might as well enjoy the time while we're still the apex living things or whatever. The apex, like the people basically in control, while we still rule the world, you know, rule the world or whatever. Might as well enjoy that time until we get enslaved by AI or whatever will happen, who knows. So this is where my current predictions of the future are. But all of those things are pure imaginations and just, well, my brain tries to make a scenario because we evolved this huge thing in our heads to be better at predicting stuff, which helps us prevent threats. However, we're at such a fast pace of changing environment that our brains can't keep up with the learning that it requires to make informed decision having the full picture. Nobody can ever have the full picture again. And we never had that. But it becomes more and more clear now. It becomes more and more pronounced now. So with the AI thing, some smart people say that that's gonna happen, and I consume that content and I'm like, oh, okay. That's gonna be fun, and so I base a lot of my decisions around that. But then also, maybe I should think twice, hey, is that fear of the future, or that just, you know, whatever, YOLO, it doesn't matter anyway, just coming from me having consumed a lot of content where people talk about AI? And the answer to that is yes. However, I do see that trend. Like, there is a lot of talk, and maybe I'll make a separate video again about AI. I completely forgot what I said in the previous one, but I know that has been on my mind for a while. I don't want to put too much in this one, but just, I noticed there's a thing where people, just also random people, start talking about AI, but it might be just that I'm in a bubble. I mean, we all are. Also, the internet was a bubble, the .com bubble, but then the internet stayed around and changed our lives dramatically. And I have the feeling that the same thing is going to happen with AI. Might make a separate video on that. Let's stay with the topic of thoughts. Because the funny thing is, I did that with emotions, right? So I learned that I have emotions, that's already a while ago, but I haven't always had that. And also I learned that I am not my emotions. My emotions occur because I experienced something, and then that's my bodily reaction on what I experienced, which makes perfect sense. If somebody screams at me and is super angry, then my segments of the brain, the amygdala or whatever it is, the core brain, the old brain, is like, oh, threat. We need to respond to that threat quickly. So boom, we got hit with emotions, and the big brain is shut out for this because we are in state of alert now, so you can't logically think about that. You need to respond quickly. That's why the emotions overrule the critical thinking. So I learned that, okay, I'm not my emotions. My emotions come from a reaction on what I experience. So if I'm angry, then, you know, it's because I experienced something. And it's not a quality of me. It doesn't make up who I am, what I'm currently feeling. Also, if I'm sad, it doesn't mean that that is a trait of mine that, oh, Andy is sad, like he is always sad, like he was born to be sad. No, it is a way to process things I experienced or things I experience. And that somehow I understood quite quickly. Maybe because I even only learned quite late, oh, that emotions is new, and then I immediately after learned, okay, emotions, something that I can feel safe with and that I can just allow and then let go again. So with emotions that worked. Funnily enough, I didn't do that with thoughts. I did hear some guided meditations be like, let the thoughts come and let them go again. But obviously I did not manage. That's just not me. Like, I was raised with I don't know if I was raised, but I grew up primarily thinking. I was not primarily feeling the world, I was primarily thinking about the world. So I was doing a lot with my brain. So therefore I identified a lot with my thoughts. And I still do, admittedly. Because who I am, I still mostly base, or I used to mostly base around what I think and who I think I am. So it's all, this whole consciousness, like the consciousness that I experience is basically my thoughts. That's very together. My lived experience comes in thoughts. Whatever I see or take in somehow through my eyes and ears and gets to the brain, and the brain builds this, you know, consciousness. We still don't really know what consciousness really is. And again, coming back to AI, can computers have that? Intuitively, I would say no, but then smart people make the point that what's the difference? Because we don't know what it is that makes the consciousness. It's like, it's a fun topic. Anyway, don't want to go there. But myself, my lived experience is my thoughts. I experience stuff through thinking about them. I make sentences in my head. I have this inner monologue. This is how I think. And this is how I make up who I think I am, right? If you take my thoughts away, who am I? Just a body experiencing some emotions, right? If I would turn my brain off and not think anymore, I would argue that I am not me, or I am not there anymore. If you cloned my body, would the other body then also have the same consciousness, and would that also be me? That gets into philosophical questions again. But if you cloned my body and took the brain away, obviously, or like the thinking brain, and just rely on the operational stuff, like if I would just go by urges, oh, I smell something good, I eat it, or I get scared, I run away, I wouldn't think that is me, that is just the body working on autopilot. You know, me breathing is not something that I do, it's my body working by itself. So I don't consider that me. I'm not breathing, even though I'm breathing, like my body breathes for me. So yeah, point is, I make up who I am through my thoughts. Therefore, it is so difficult to detach the thoughts from the me, whatever that is. But, and that's a fairly new development, I recently started to say, hey, I am not my thoughts, because my thoughts are indeed made up of what I experience, and more concretely, what I consume. Like what information I experience. Like what information is being thrown at me, because information, that's what the brain processes, and that's what makes up the thoughts. And I can also give you a very simple example for that. I am very LGBTQ friendly. I wouldn't argue that I am gay or even bi. I had phases where I was like, oh yeah, I'm pan or whatever. But really, I'm probably, like, for all intents and purposes, and for also for how I behave, like I'm open to several things, but you could put me into the cis category, really. However, in 2010 or the years before, that's when I was consuming a lot of YouTube, and what the YouTube algorithm fed me back then was a lot of content from people who were gay or lesbians or queer in one way or another. And they were talking about their struggles and about their worldview and about how they see the world and how they want to see the world. And that's kind of where I picked up those values. If I wouldn't have consumed YouTube in 2010, I would not have such a strong alliance to LGBTQ+. And that still persists until today, because Fusion, or our Fusion community, is also very queer friendly, because we have those values, because I brought those values and I found people who share those values who I co-organized with. So that's still, that's stuck around. But it stuck around because I experienced it somewhere earlier in life. Let's say I would have grown up in Russia. Same person, same me, same genetics, same brain. Would I be pro-LGBTQ? I doubt it. I highly doubt it, because I highly doubt that I would have had the same information thrown at me. Would I still be me? Would I still be I? Like, I mean, yes. And also no, I would have other values. So what makes up me? Is it my values? And are my values just purely based on what information I consume? Then what is really me? Am I made up of the values of bigger companies who feed me that information? That's stuff that I'm thinking about now. And so I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that I have that value because I consumed that information. Does it make sense to you? Do you see where I'm trying to go with this? I'm not saying it's bad, or like all I'm trying to do is maybe be a bit more aware of what information I consume, but at the same time I only have limited control really, because I'm like all the other people on this planet, a monkey who is very, how do you say, easily affected by, there's a word for that, affected, who is easily affected by the dopamine that scrolling gets you. And those apps are so smart. I kind of need those apps also for, you know, planning events and getting actual useful information. But then they're so smart. I recently figured out if I hit the back button on Facebook or Instagram to close the app, like wanting to close the app, doing the back button, what it does is it suddenly shows me stories. It's like, oh, you want to leave the app? Have you seen this? Like, what? And then, of course, my monkey brain is like, ooh, that's nice. And then I keep scrolling. I'm so prone to that because my monkey brain just loves it. Like, it's so easy to get, like, and I do have app timers for those things that often save me. Like, after 20 minutes of scrolling, oh, the app paused. And I didn't even realize I was scrolling, right? So it's like, I have systems in place that limit that, but I'm still very exposed to what the algorithms want to throw at me. And this is just gonna get worse because the algorithms are just gonna get better in manipulating me, because they're gonna use more and more AI and they're gonna learn more and more easily what I'm really prone to, and then they feed me more of that shit because they just want to optimize their profits. Which, welcome to capitalism. I recently heard capitalism works only in accordance with regulation. Like, regulated capitalism is a good system. However, problems with that is, first of all, regulators can't keep up. And secondly, regulators are being bought by the companies now. So it's like, I mean, if you look at the US, who runs that? I mean, I don't even want to talk about it because that again just gets me frustrated and sad and just annoyed. So I try to just drop that and be like, nothing I can do about it. Because if I read the news, I'm like, the world is going to shit. And that's also not a good feeling. So I tend to ignore the news. I recently realized I don't even know anymore who is the Chancellor of Austria. I used to follow that stuff and I now ignore all of it until we get to the next election, when I will read up on it again and follow it a bit more, because I do want to vote and I do want to still participate in democracy. But at the moment, if I don't need to vote, then there's not much I can do, I tell myself. And maybe that's also just, I tell myself that because I learned it, or it's also a conclusion that I came to based on whatever. Did I come up with this? It feels like I did, but also it's probably influenced by what people around me think. And by people around me, I mean also the content I consume from other people. Anyway, so that's that. By the way, I'm currently in Brno for Zouk time. Zouk time. You guessed it, Zouk festival. Just with a party pass, so I have time during the day to chill or go to a place to film a vlog. But actually, this thing, fun fact, led me to another great example of my thoughts changing. Because, you know, I have to wear that the entire weekend, and it's paper, right? This is paper. But I can take a shower with it, it's water repellent. If water touches it, it doesn't break like regular paper. So how do they do that? Let me tell you a story of paper straws. Subtitle, How I Keep Changing My Mind. I used to, well, in the very beginning, I used to love straws. When I was a child, I loved to drink my cacao with straws. And that was actually the first thing I ever bought, fun story, plastic straws. That was when I was, I don't even know how old, I was in primary school, and I lied to my mom that I need money for school when actually I wanted to go buy those straws. And I feel like I mentioned that story already once somewhere. But anyway, so I bought those. I ended up having 1 shilling, not enough. But then the cashier was nice enough to give it to me anyway. And that's the first thing I bought. So anyway, point is, I used to love straws. I also had like proper ones, like harder ones that had like a, you know, a shape. So if I drink it, then the cacao goes through the shape and then to my mouth. And I had 3 different one of those and I loved them. And when I was at my grandparents and they didn't have straws, then I was like sad. Well, I don't know, but I complained, I guess, or I was unhappy. Probably I was sad, but really I showed it with like anger and kind of, because that's the child I was, not knowing how emotions work. Anyway, so I used to love them. And then later, I used to hate them. I hated plastic straws. They put them into every drink completely unnecessary. You can drink it without that stupid straw. And that stupid straw just pollutes the environment, right? Plastic straws, so much plastic waste, and then they end up in some turtle's nose or whatever, killing the sea fish, whatever the story was. So I really thought that plastic straws are a big deal, and I do not want any straw in my drink. I used to also say, without a straw, please. If I knew that there's a good chance that it comes with a straw, I used to order my drink without the plastic straw. Because fucking plastic, that is just polluting the environment, right? That was my thinking. And it's not that that was super wrong. I mean, it's a bit, I would say, out of relation to the other plastic that we use everywhere. But I also had like big issues with like how much, and I still have issues with how much plastic we waste on certain things. But anyway, I thought that plastic straws are a big deal, when really, probably if you analyze it, if you look at the numbers, how little of plastic use they make up, it could have been neglected. But anyway, I thought it's a big deal. So then, because a lot of other people, especially in Europe and in environmentally conscious areas of the world, people complained about the plastic straws, like me, they came up with paper straws. Because paper straws make it better, right? And in the beginning, when I saw paper straws, I was like, hey, yeah, they're made of paper now. Paper is more environmentally friendly than plastic, which, first of all, is probably wrong, because the amount of energy it takes to produce such a paper straw, the raw material you need to get for that, it comes from a tree, so you gotta kill a few of those trees. And the amount of raw material you need for a paper straw versus for a plastic straw is pretty efficient, I think. It's just a little bit of plastic. Paper, I think, needs more resources to be produced, so it's like way more costly and therefore also way more environmentally unfriendly to produce a paper straw. But that's not it. Like, if it was just about that, okay, fine. Yeah, still better. Maybe then if they need to pay more, then they use less, so that plays against that. So we can make that argument that it's still better to have paper straws. Once again, coming back to nothing is one-dimensional, there is many things to consider. But then really, and that's where it comes back to this thing as well, paper straws are not actually purely made of paper, because obviously that wouldn't work. Have you tried putting paper into water? That's not the quality you want of your straw. That it would break, and it would just, you need something that doesn't interact with the liquid. How do you make something not interact with the liquid? Well, humans have invented this fun chemical that doesn't interact with anything and doesn't burn and doesn't do anything. And you can spray it on stuff, and then that thing doesn't interact with anything. And you use that for, water repellents of clothing and shoes and paper tags and paper straws. I haven't actually checked that fact, but I'm assuming that's how it's done. And so for paper straws to work, they need to put the so-called forever chemicals onto the paper, primarily on the inside. They call it forever chemicals because they don't interact with anything, and so therefore they stay around forever, which from an environmental standpoint, again, pretty bad. I mean, plastic, having microplastic in my rivers and stuff, and a bit of microplastic in my brain, I think I'm fine with that. But those PFAS, forever chemicals, they have been proven scientifically to, and again, that information I would probably need to double check, but smart people around me say that, so I trust them. They have been proven to be, I can't actually quote it, but they're bad for your health. I don't know what exactly, but they're causing some, I don't know, what is it, cancer? I have no idea. I'm making stuff up now. But not just they have been linked to, so higher levels of that in your blood means you're more likely to have that. No, they have been proven to cause that. Massive difference, because things are being linked like it's a causation. We know that those things kill you slowly, essentially, is what it says, or cause some stuff that kills you. And that obviously is not great. Like, I don't want to be killed by that for no reason. And so thinking about that again now, is a paper straw better than a plastic straw? If you let me choose now, I'm like, I will go for the plastic one. I mean, ideally I go for the none of them if I don't need it, but if I have to choose, I would actually gladly take the plastic one now, because plastic, and I have my issues with plastic also, but I'm less afraid of having plastic inside my body than I am to have those PFAS inside my body. And that changed, guess what? Why do I think that? Because I consumed content that told me about that. Would I have never consumed that content, I would still think that, hey, paper straws are better. And that's exactly, again, I think what I consume. So that's something that I found out because I consumed the content. Now I have to think about, well, what are all the things that I haven't seen content about and therefore make wrong assumptions? Because, you know, brain makes assumptions to protect me from stuff. And one of my assumptions was paper straw is better than plastic straw. Whereas now I reversed that. And that happens throughout several domains. And like, I pretty much changed how I think about climate change. I very much changed how I think about plastic or those PFAS or, you know, living life and prosperity kind of. I now have a story of I'm the second to last or third to last generation. Like my children might be the last generation, something like that. Again, other topic. But this is all just my thoughts, and they are subject to change depending on what content I consume. So my point here is, I don't want to rely on my thoughts, and I don't want to fully trust them either. I can be just like, hey, I think that, but there's a good chance that I'm just wrong about it. Yeah? What's up? No, I haven't seen anything. Sorry. Is he trying to distract me from something? See, that's another thing. If somebody speaks to me in public, I used to be like, hey, I'm glad to help. And now I'm more like, this could be a strategy of them to distract me from something else. Because I have my bag here with my wallet, I have my camera here, I have my phone and my keys in my pockets. If one of the guys distracts me, the two other guys can steal from me or something like that. And that tells me something about myself. That tells me I'm not feeling super safe in this world anymore. I used to have this very naive worldview that nobody would ever hurt me, like nobody would ever do something bad against me because you don't need to do that. But I only learned that because I grew up in an environment where nobody needed to hurt one another to survive. As soon as you have people around who are struggling to survive and get more and more desperate, they will steal from you. They will even kill you to survive another day. So I don't want to go into those areas where there are more of those people. So I'm fairly happy in Europe where standards of living are still pretty good and welfare is still pretty high and healthcare is pretty good. So yeah, just thoughts. I don't want to go to Brazil, even though I would love to experience some other stuff, but I don't allow myself to go there because I'm too afraid to just get shot or stabbed or whatever. I mean, if I really wanted to go, I could make it happen. I just need a local tour guide or whatever. But I'm like, risk reward is not high enough. And all of that is also based on my thoughts that makes an image of what I expect it to be. I have no idea what it is like in Brazil. I can only go by what people tell me and what I see on the internet and then make up my mind and make informed decisions. But I have never the full picture, obviously, because I've never been there and I judge it based on what I heard, which is good. That's how people that we are a social species. It's good that we do that. If everybody would always try to experience everything for themselves, first of all, they couldn't because there's so much to experience and it's just limited time and at some point you die. But also, if somebody's like, hey, don't go in there, you will get stabbed, then the other people better don't try it for themselves, but, you know, go by what they heard and not go in there because otherwise they will also get stabbed. So it makes sense that we work together and believe what other people say to keep us out of trouble. However, that can be used for manipulation. If somebody doesn't want you to go in there, then they can just tell you, hey, don't go in there, you're gonna get stabbed, even though there's nothing dangerous in there. So, you know, it's always this, and then it's complicated. Life is complicated, but point is, I am not my thoughts, and I'm trying to detach a bit of it and be like, why am I thinking that? And with everything, it's probably just a temporary thing. Pretty much all of it, including my core values, I have from how I grew up. I don't think I'm gonna change my core values, but I have my core values because of the environment that I grew up in. And so I want to also spread those core values. But it's not me who developed those core values. Like, I didn't come up with them. I just took them from the people around me. And I now consider them mine and I identify with them. But it all just comes from this. You get what I'm trying to say? It's all just, this is put on me. It's not me inherently. Again, if you would clone me and let me grow up in China or in a Muslim country, let me grow up Muslim with the same genetics, I will turn out a so different person. Not saying it would be better or worse, just different. So also other people have different opinions and other core values and other views, and that's okay, because it's what they grew up with. It's not that they're inherently bad people. There's probably a reason why they do those things. Even what we think the most craziest ones, like, I don't know, Hamas or whatever, we portray them as those horrible terrorist organization because it just clashes with our core values. But I don't know how it is from their side seeing us. Probably they see us as, whoa, completely against their core values and just us being horrible people, doing all that free love and fucking whoever and letting women walk around with open hair. What a crazy world. Because maybe to that, and I don't know because I'm not in that situation. I cannot talk for them, but I'm like, that developed somehow. It just clashes with what we experienced or what values we have, because we just see the world differently. And it's difficult because on the other hand, I do want to also put my values on other people or spread them, right? And I'm not happy if other people don't align with my values. For instance, basic human rights and giving people the freedom to do whatever they want. That's also one of the issues I have with China, essentially, even though, again, I also actually highly, admire? I think I admire China. I think technologically they're going in a really interesting direction. And we just see China as the evil country or whatever because we get our stories from the US. Like, we in Europe are very heavily US influenced. And US and China, they just don't get along because they compete on several things. Also on the biggest military, on who's the #1 world power. So obviously the US doesn't like China, and therefore Europe doesn't like China per proxy. So that's also just stuff that is put on me that I don't like China. That is implanted with the algorithms into my brain because I consume, guess what? Primarily US media. YouTube, US based. That's what I consume most. I used to be on TikTok, I'm not anymore, but I used to be on TikTok, and at the time that I was on TikTok, I started not liking the US. Guess why? Because China's algorithms work differently and they feed me different stuff. They were feeding me a lot of the defund the police kind of stuff, because they want to destabilize the US, obviously. That it all makes sense. But the whole point here is our monkey brains are very prone to being influenced by all of that content. And I somehow managed to get this third-person view on, oh, he's thinking about that again, probably because the algorithms made him think about that. I'm a puppet of the algorithms just because I have no way to protect myself against that, or I choose not to protect myself against that. But I can look third person and be like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. I'm thinking that because I'm so afraid of China, because I'm afraid of World War III, because I don't like PFAS, because I consumed that content. Crazy, eh? And that's relatively new that I have this third person view on my thoughts. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, makes sense that I think that. And I can be like, okay, I still make the decisions based on my thoughts. But it's good to observe, like, I mean, I could go on for hours talking about that, and other people making their decisions based on their thoughts, which are based on what information they obtain and what they think is whatever. But I don't think I want to go there, otherwise I start to argue. I'll try to imagine Putin's case or whatever, which is also very funny. Same story, going full circle back to the family lunch, where it was very clear to me that all of them, that's the one thing they had in common, is they're very anti-Russia. They're very condemning the war and portraying Putin Putin as the bad guy, which I'm mostly on their side in terms of condemning the war. I'm just personally not a fan of war, but it's so funny how we Europeans are, I don't know, I imagine that we don't at all have the full picture. We really don't understand why Putin acts that way. We just portray him as this crazy person who has gone crazy and now starts a war. But we really don't understand it. I don't understand it. I'm not fed that side of the media, and also I probably don't want to, and I don't want to get all the, what is it called, the propaganda on both sides. Like there's propaganda on all of the, US is also doing propaganda. Russia certainly is. But for us to say Russia is doing propaganda is easy. For us to say we are doing propaganda is more difficult. But I'm pretty sure we do. I might also make a video on that because I find it funny. But it's just, you know, analyzing, why do we think that Putin is such a horrible guy? Because he started a war. Okay, yeah, but why did he do it? Try to get to the bottom of why, because obviously this is not, first of all, it's not a new thing, and secondly, it's not a rash decision of he spontaneously decided to invade Ukraine. No, that's been going on for a while, and that's because of the history with NATO and the US. And I partly also got fed that side of the story, but I don't think I want to talk about it in this video. So, point is, I want to see things more reflected, and I am not my thoughts, and I try to detach a bit from them. And it's now getting dark enough that this video quality is decreasing enough, and I'm getting cold. Besides, I have a dance to go to, so that's what I'm gonna do, and I will see you in the next video. I really wanted to make a video about this topic because I find it fascinating that I can suddenly look at my thoughts and be like, oh, interesting, and not identify so much with it. I'm not attached to my thoughts. If somebody criticizes my arguments or my current point, that I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. You see it differently. And I also admit that I am wrong often. Some of the times I'm trying to get things right, but I can never have the full picture. So obviously I'm open to just being wrong. And that's also a quality that some people lack. It's just some people also, they always want to be right, and they will defend their point to death. Because I don't know what it is that they're afraid of. If they're not right, then they lose credibility forever or whatever, which is absolute bullshit. Anyway, also absolute bullshit is the lighting situation here, so I'm gonna go. I'll see you in the next LVlog. Freedom and health to you. Make your backup and observe your thoughts or whatever. This is also just content that you're being provided, so also take it with a grain of salt. Don't take my, like, this is just, whatever I say is also just basically put into my head with algorithms, and now the algorithm shows it to you, so good luck. Mom, the one person I know who's watching my video. Well, my mom, my dad, and one friend. Those are the people who I know watch my videos. And who do I make them for? I don't know. Myself or the AI who will crawl that content and do whatever with it. I don't know. Have fun, algorithms, providing that content to people, or not if you decide that that's the wrong strategy, which, you know, algorithms decide. Okay, I gotta go because I get annoyed by not being in focus. Also, my throat starts to hurt from the speaking here. All right, good enough. I think I made my point and I gave examples, and yeah, works for me. Oh, I have so many more cool topics. We're at the beginning of an extinction event. That might be the topic of the next video. See you then!